So the pasuk says, and this is after the flood, when Noach was kind of nervous to leave the teva and build the world, seeing that everything he might work on might be destroyed again in the future. And that's when Hashem told him that he doesn't have to worry and that he's not going to do it again. He's never going to flood the world again. In fact, he gave him a sign, which is the rainbow. That's a sign that Hashem is not going to destroy the world. And in the context of that discussion, the pasuk says, Oid kol yemei haaretz. So long as the earth endures, which basically means that the earth might not last forever. At some point in the future, when Mashiach comes, according to some opinions, the world as we know it is going to cease to exist, and all of the souls are going to go back to Gan Eden and whatnot. So there's no guarantee that the world as we know it will exist forever.
There is some disturbance, Rabbi.
Rabbi, can you mute everybody, please?
Yeah, but I think it's me.
No, there's background talk behind. If it's behind you, it's background talk.
Okay, so how do we do that?
That's better.
Okay, I'm not sure how to do it, but
what you did is wonderful. It stopped.
Okay. So if anybody needs to unmute themselves, they can. Okay, so the point is, so long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. So we're basically being promised, we've been promised by Hashem, that the seasons as we know it are not going to stop. Now, by the way, this is not the main topic of discussion, but I'll bring in the Sefarno who says that the whole idea of the seasons started at that time, and that before the flood there was no such thing as seasons. Basically, if you want to put it into scientific terms, what causes the seasons is the tilt of the earth. Because the earth is tilted, so at different times of the year, different parts of the earth are closer or further from the sun. And that small difference causes there to be colder time when we're further from the sun and warmer time when we're closer to the sun and so on. And that actually started after the flood. It seems like before the flood, the earth was not tilted. And therefore the seasons were the same all the time, which might explain the medrash that says that at that time the world was so healthy, people were tall, everything grew beautifully. We know people lived for a long time. And that had to do with the fact that the seasons didn't change, and a lot of the disease is caused by the changes in the seasons and the temperatures and so on. So this pasuk is telling us, I'm muting everybody, you can unmute yourself if you need to. So this pasuk is telling us, as the Sefarno, that as long as the world exists as we know it, the seasons will continue. In the Messianic era, according to the Sefarno, the seasons will cease to exist. Once again, the world will go back to the way it was before the flood. Again, this is the opinion of the Sefarno. I cannot say that everybody agrees with it. I don't know. But in the Sefarno's opinion, the world is going to go back to its pre-flood state when Mashiach comes. It's going to straighten up, no more tilt. And all the year, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be like Florida around the globe all year round. Florida winter, I should say. So, and therefore there's not going to be any disease because a lot of that, like we said, is connected to the changing seasons.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I wanted to ask, how did they communicate that? Is that a year later after they saw that the seasons changing, or you say it started right after the Mabul?
Well, Hashem told this to Noach. This is Hashem speaking to Noach.
Yeah,
Hashem said to Noach, from now on
yeah.
until the end of time as we know it, there are
Yeah.
going to be these 6 seasons.
Oh,
How did
so,
Noach
okay,
know? How did Noach know what he meant since he never experienced seasons? That I couldn't tell you.
that's what I'm asking. Okay,
Right? He could only imagine it, but he found out soon enough.
yeah.
Now the Hamik Davar, who's Reb Naftali Tzvi Berlin, says an interesting point about this. He says that the fact that the world is not going to be destroyed actually has to do with the changing seasons. He says, why was the world destroyed with Noach and the flood? It's because they were so successful and so healthy and lived so long and had no troubles that they never bothered doing tshuva. Life was so good that they never felt the need to do tshuva.
They were never punished.
They were never punished. Exactly. It was one big punishment at the end, and they were done. On the other hand, from now on, when there are going to be seasons, and there are going to be the associated disease that has to do with that, so man is going to have to work harder just to remain alive, and that life is going to have its ups and downs, which is going to cause people to be more humble, to be more thoughtful, not to just indulge in excess. So this relates to the fact that there would not be another flood. An interesting Chassam Sofer on this pasuk that is going to tie in to the topic of the shir, which is about non-Jewish people keeping Shabbos. So the Chassam Sofer says that the pasuk should be understood to mean, I'll close that window, that the pasuk should be understood to mean that those, let me just read the end of the pasuk. Yoim v'layla lo yishboisu, those that do not stop working day and night, they are promised of continued existence. According to the Chassam Sofer, the whole point of this pasuk is that Hashem is promising that not just will he not destroy the Jewish people, but he will also not destroy the Gentile people. The Gentiles should not be afraid and say, well, even though Hashem is not going to bring a flood to the world, maybe he'll just destroy the non-chosen people, because after all, they're not chosen, and he'll just leave the Jewish people alone, and that's it. This pasuk is assuring, or was assuring Noach, that Yoim v'layla lo yishboisu, those who work day and night and do not observe Shabbos. The word lo yishboisu can mean do not keep Shabbos. It's obviously not the simple pshat, but we're going to learn that the Gemara understands this to mean the same. But again, according to the Chassam Sofer, it's saying those that do not keep Shabbos, they are also assured of continued survival. Hashem does not plan on wiping out the other nations of the world either. Yes, I see somebody raise their hand, please.
Yeah, the question is, you refer to quote unquote Jewish people, but how does that relate to the fact that this is a long time before Matan Torah?
It's a prophetic statement. it's speaking about a future time when there will be those that will observe Shabbos. Even those that will not observe Shabbos will also be included in the promise of non-destruction. At that time, you're right, there was nobody keeping Shabbos per se because there was no Jewish people. But it was a prophetic verse for the future time.
Okay. Thank you, Rabbi.
Sure. Okay, so here's the Gemara in Sanhedrin 58b. Omer Reish Lakish, Oived kechavim sheshavas chayev misa. If a non-Jew observes Shabbos, he deserves to die. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Yoim v'layla lo yishboisu. Day and night, they shall not keep Shabbos. This is such a classic Talmudic interpretation where we take the words and we can completely take them out of context and translate them in a way that is completely different than the simple meaning. Again, the simple meaning of the verse is that the seasons that we just listed, 6 seasons, lo yishboisu, they will not stop. According to the Gemara, the instruction is being given to Noach. Noach is the forefather of all mankind, the Noahides. Hashem is telling him, Yoim v'layla lo yishboisu. Day and night, I don't want you to keep Shabbos. No Shabbos for the non-Jews. This is very different than the common conception. The common conception, I'm sorry?
But at that time, they didn't know that there'll be Jews that will accept the Torah.
It's a prophetic statement. It's not only for that time, it's for the future time. When there will be a Shabbos, I don't want you keeping it. Hashem is telling the Bnei Noach. Only the Jews should observe Shabbos.
Only the ones that accept the Torah.
Exactly. Nobody else is allowed to keep Shabbos. This is very different than the common understanding that people have in the wider world. People think that they should observe Shabbos. Jews, non-Jews, well, Jews should obviously, but many non-Jews feel that they should observe Shabbos. After all, it's in the 10 commandments. And there's like a kind of belief that many of them have that the 10 commandments apply to all of humanity. Well, here we see from this Gemara that it's quite not the case. There are 7 laws that apply to all humanity, and those are the 7 Noahide laws. None of the rest of the Torah applied to non-Jews. Now, there are mitzvahs that a non-Jew can do voluntarily, but this is not one of them. A non-Jew should not observe Shabbos voluntarily. And there are 3 reasons that the commentaries offer for this. But first, let me finish quoting the Gemara. The Gemara says, Amar Ravina, afilu sheni b'Shabbos. Ravina says this applies even on Monday. Not only can they not observe Shabbos on Shabbos, but they also should not observe Shabbos on Monday, a day of rest on Monday. For your information, a non-Jew who is going through the process of conversion is generally encouraged to keep the mitzvahs even before they convert, so that they should be familiar with living a religious Jewish lifestyle. Of course, that includes keeping Shabbos, which is obviously one of the more difficult mitzvahs. We want them to become used to it. However, until they actually convert, they must desecrate the Shabbos at least once during the course of every Shabbos. They can turn on a light, they can turn off a light, they can just do a little bit of boirer, you name it. They should do something to indicate or to make it be that they're not actually observing the full Shabbos. And that has to do with this Gemara, that Yom V'Layla Lo Yishboisu, they should not observe Shabbos. Now, that which the Gemara says, Chayev Misa, they deserve to die, the Rambam says that no court ever carried out this sentence. Even when the Jews were ruling the land of Israel, and they had the power over the Gentiles that lived there, no court ever killed a non-Jew for observing Shabbos. When it says Chayev Misa, it means that spiritually they deserve to die. It's a sin deserving of death, but it doesn't mean the court actually kills them. And the fact is, the verse, nowhere does it say that it's a capital crime to do it. It just says you shouldn't do it. Even if we understand this verse to mean that, which is obviously a stretch and not the simple meaning, but even if we understand it that way, it doesn't say what the punishment is or that there is any punishment. The Gemara says, Azharasan zuhi misasan, that when it comes to the non-Jewish people, any mitzvah that they are given is automatically a capital mitzvah. There is no mitzvah that is not a capital, one of capital punishment. So that's what the Gemara says. But in any case, like I said, it's not actually capital punishment. It's just a theoretical thing. Okay, 3 reasons as to why a non-Jew should not observe Shabbos. Number 1 is Rashi. This is in number 6 if you have the handout. Rashi says that when it says even Monday, it's teaching us that this problem with observing Shabbos is not about Shabbos per se. It's not about Sunday. Shabbos, you might say, well, the reason is because they're stealing the holy day of Shabbos from us. The Jewish people were given a special mitzvah. Ois hi beini uvein bnei Yisrael. It's a sign between me and the Jewish people, we say in Shabbos davening. And here, if a non-Jew comes along and takes the sign, so to speak, by observing Shabbos, it's like he's stealing that holy day from the Jews, trying to take it for himself. So that would mean that it's really about the fact that he's observing it as a religious day. But the fact that Ravina says it applies even to Monday, says Rashi, indicates that it's not about the fact that he's stealing Shabbos. It's also not about the fact that he's creating a new religion. Meaning to say, if you say that there's a problem with observing Shabbos on Sunday, which is, of course, when the Christians observe their day of rest, or they used to, I don't know if they do anymore, but they used to. So you could say, well, maybe they are chayav misa, maybe they deserve to die because they are making up a religion that is false. What's the idea of not working on Sunday? What is that even about? It doesn't make any sense. Sunday is not when Hashem rested. So what are you doing? You're making stuff up. Maybe that itself is the reason that they deserve to die, for starting a new religion. And that's why Ravina says, no, even on Monday, meaning to say it's not about stealing Shabbos. And it's not about starting new religions. It's about the fact that they're supposed to work. A person is created to work. Adam la'amal yulad. Man is created to toil. We are here to work. We're here to change the world. And a person who just doesn't work, even not for religious reasons. Again, I'm talking about a person who's not obligated to, a non-Jewish person. He is basically not fulfilling his purpose in this world. So he's chayav misa. When we say chayav misa, again, we're not saying he's going to be killed, but he deserves to die. He's like, what are you doing here? You're here, you should be working. Working doesn't have to mean going to work like 9-to-5 job, but you should be working, you should be accomplishing, you should be doing something, changing the world. Otherwise, what are you here for? That is the way Rashi explains it. Okay, here's number 2, the Rambam. Number 7 in the handout. I'm going to read the Hebrew and then the English. V'chein akum sheshavas afilu b'yoyim mimois hachoil. Imaso la'atzmoi k'moi Shabbos chayav misa. Ve'in tzarich loimer maso moed la'atzmoi. Forgive my Hebrew, I'm going to translate it in a minute. Kloli shel davar in manicha noisen lachadesh das v'lases mitzvos la'atzman midaiton. Ela oye ger tzedek v'yikabel kol ha-mitzvos o yamen b'terasa v'le'yosef v'le'yigra. The Masach with our Shabbos achidish davar makan noisen v'en shnoisen madin noisen shulchay misa al zeh avol in nerek. A Gentile who rests, even on a weekday, observing that day as a Shabbos, is obligated to die. Needless to say, he is obligated for that punishment if he creates a festival for himself, meaning to say a separate day for Shabbos, not on Saturday, like the Christians do on Sunday, like the Muslims do on Friday, like the Buddhists do, I don't know when, if they do it, or whatever. The point is, if any person creates a day of rest for themselves, they're basically making up a religion that is not true. The true religion is the Jewish religion. Now, a non-Jew doesn't have to observe the mitzvahs of the Jewish religion, but he has to accept the precepts of the Jewish religion. And to make up another day is not correct. It's a falsehood. The general principle governing these matters is they are not allowed to originate a new religion or create mitzvahs for themselves based on their own decisions. They may either become righteous converts, right, Jewish, and accept all the mitzvahs, or retain their statutes, which are the 7, without adding or detracting from them. So don't make up mitzvahs. If a Gentile studies the Torah, makes a Shabbos, or creates a religious practice, a Jewish court should beat him, punish him, and inform him that he's obligated to die, or he is not to be executed. Like I said before, the Rambam does not hold that they're actually killed. I don't know if they would actually beat or punish. We have no record of that, but that's what the Rambam says. Okay, so that's reason number 2. According to the Rambam, the issue with a non-Jew observing Shabbos is that he's basically making up a religion. And that's not right for him to keep it when he's not obligated. That's made up. And to make a different day is also made up. And finally, we have reason number 8. Sorry, reason number 3, which is in number 8 in the handout. Here is the reason that the Medrash says. Re'u, it's quoting a verse in the Torah portion of Beshalach, when Hashem gave the Jewish people the man, which of course fell in a double portion on Friday, which is why we have the Lechem Mishnah, the double loaf on the Shabbos meals. And that pasuk says, Re'u ki Hashem nasan lochem es ha-Shabbos. See that Hashem has given you the Shabbos. And the Medrash says the word lochem means that it's only for you, it's only for the Jews, not for the Gentiles. Based on this, the Medrash says, if a non-Jew observes the Shabbos, not only do they not get rewarded, but on the contrary, they deserve a punishment. The Medrash quotes this pasuk that we just had, Yom v'layla lo yishbosu, day and night they shall not keep Shabbos. It also quotes the pasuk that we mentioned earlier, Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oisi la'olam. It's a special sign between us and the Jewish people and Hashem, that is. And he gives a mashal, he gives an example for it in the Medrash. Mashal l'melech yoshev matruna yesheves kenegdoi. Imagine a king is sitting, and his queen is sitting opposite him, and they're sitting and they're chatting. A person who walks in between the king and the queen and disrupts their connection deserves to die. How dare he disrupt the king and the queen in their private time together? Let me just shut my phone off. Somebody's trying to call me on my landline. Hold on one second. And I said, Elliot, just called and said that Elliot's up there. Okay, bye. I have to go. Bye. Okay, sorry. Okay, so according to the Medrash, the issue is that the Shabbos is a special gift, a special sign between us and Hashem. And if a non-Jew takes it on, it's trying to be something he's not. And that's like we mentioned earlier, the reason that Rashi does not give, but it's the idea that it's diminishing the specialness of the Jewish people by saying, well, they're not so special that they have Shabbos. Well, we have Shabbos too. You know, the Seventh-day Adventists keep Shabbos, right? You all know that?
Yes,
Okay, but you know that they don't really keep Shabbos properly.
I
You know why
make
not?
that, I don't know that for a fact.
I'm sorry?
I make that assumption. I don't know that for a fact. I've never been.
You
in a
don't,
position-
they don't.
They
And
don't.
also, you don't deserve to. Unless you work like a Jew, you're not allowed to rest like a Jew. It's very, very simple. When you
Okay.
work the way you're supposed to, Sheishes Yamim Tasem Malachtecha, then you can sit and rest for a seventh day.
Okay,
No
I
problem.
hear. That depends on the person, that depends on the person, but I hear. Now, the reason that they don't observe Shabbos properly, even if they do read the 39 Malachas and keep all of those, which I don't think they do, but they keep it at the wrong time. They keep it from Friday night, 12 a.m. till Saturday night, 11:59 p.m. So they're not keeping it the way we keep it, which is sundown on Friday night till stars out on Shabbos afternoon. They're keeping it, part of Friday night and part of Shabbos day. So I don't think they're chayav misa based on that. It's a good thing. Okay. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe discusses this halacha about non-Jews observing Shabbos. Two questions he has. First of all, what is so bad with a non-Jew observing Shabbos? Okay, let's say they're not doing it to make their own religion. They're not saying they have to do it. Now, they're not doing it on Sunday or Friday. They're saying this is a day that Hashem rested. They believe in the Torah, and they're saying Hashem rested on this day. I want to commemorate Hashem's resting on that day, and I want to rest. That seems like a wonderful thing. After all, the non-Jews should believe in Hashem, should believe in the creation of the world. So what's wrong with them publicizing their beliefs and sharing it with others for everybody to know that they agree that Hashem created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh? What is so terrible about that?
Rabbi,
Yes.
so if they believe in Torah, it says in the Torah that God is not a man. So they don't really believe in Torah.
Well, what if they don't believe that God is a man? What if they're not part of the Catholic religion or the Christians that believe that? What if they believe in Islam, or maybe a branch of Christianity that only believes that man was a prophet and not the son of God? I'm not fully aware of all their beliefs, but, or let's say even better, let's say they're a Noahide. They believe 100% of the Torah. They don't believe in any of the Narishkeit of Christianity, nothing. They believe in the Torah 100%. They're observing the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, and they want, as an extra credit type of thing, to also observe Shabbos. What's so terrible? We know that in general, a non-Jew is allowed to do extra credit mitzvahs. If let's say you have a non-Jew over for a Shabbos meal, right? We do it all the time. We have, unfortunately, neighbors who are intermarried. From time to time, we invite them for a Shabbos meal. He wants to say a bracha on the food, bevakasha. He wants to wash his hands and say a bracha, bevakasha. So he's not obligated, okay, but he's doing it for extra credit. What's the problem?
Yeah, but he ain't making kiddush.
I do not ask him to make kiddush now. There's only so far I'll go. So that's question number one. Why is it so terrible for a non-Jew to observe Shabbos if it would seem like he or she is simply reaffirming his belief in the creation of the world? Yes.
Because
You're breaking up. I can't hear you properly.
Something wrong with your connection.
Yeah, I'm not hearing you properly.
what I'm saying is that
You have
when
two
we go into a
instruments
restaurant, the
connected.
kosher
You have more than
Can
one.
you hear-
You have more than one instrument connected.
Maybe type in your question because I'm not hearing you.
Rabbi, could I ask you something, please?
Yes, please, by all means.
You know, I was under the impression that either you're Jewish or you're not Jewish.
Yes,
In between,
absolutely.
period.
Exactly. It's like being pregnant. There's no halfway.
I beg your pardon?
It's like being
You know
pregnant.
what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not trying to be mean or making an incorrect, in other words, trying to tell people, be mean about the whole thing, but either you're Jewish or you're not Jewish. I mean, Tukazov and Tish.
100%.
I mean, that's my feeling, and it's not that, look, my son is married to a non-Jew. That's fine. That's very nice. My brother has been
It's not
married.
really
to a
fine and it's
non-Jew.
not really so nice, but it is
My
what it is.
brother has been married to a non-Jew for 40 years, and she keeps the holidays just like him. She's not a convert, okay? But she's a wonderful wife to my brother,
Right.
okay? But she doesn't celebrate the Christian holidays at all. But
Right.
she has never been converted. But she, you know, life has to go on. But when it comes to whether you're Jewish or not, I mean, there's
How come if it's your family, you accept it, but otherwise you don't?
the thing is this, it has nothing to do, these people I'm talking about believe in God, believe in one God.
Susan, you don't have to explain it even. Whatever they are, you're at peace. Thank God you're at peace.
Yes, exactly,
Whatever transpired, and that's it.
exactly. They're
Yes.
still not Jewish to me, believe me. They're still not Jewish, but I'm not going to push them away from the family.
Sei gesund.
Exactly. So, yes, we're not suggesting that a person should be half Jewish or a little bit Jewish or sometimes Jewish. It's all or nothing. If a non-Jew is born a non-Jew, they remain a non-Jew for their entire lives unless they convert properly. And if they convert properly, they're 100% Jewish. And if they don't, they're not. And there's no halfway. When I used to work in the Shoalball Harbor, so the Aleph Institute, as Isaac knows and used to be in the head of, was upstairs. And I remember I discussed a case once with this fellow who wanted to convert, and he was keeping everything, and he learned so much, and he wanted to be Jewish. He just couldn't go to the mikveh, because obviously they're not going to let him go to the mikveh to become Jewish if he's in jail. And even though I didn't know him
I'm
personally.
not so sure, even if you could go to the mikvah, I'm not so sure that a decision made while you're confined, la halacha would be, I'm not getting involved with the rabbis now, but that was just a point that we used to raise, because we used to have inmates all the time wanting to get, the kosher treats and get together with the rabbi and all that other stuff. And it's all very nice. But
Right, exactly. So they like the grape juice and the gefilte fish and all that. I don't know about the matzah, but anyway, so that's what it is. You can want it from today until tomorrow, but unless you actually go through the ritual, it's not actually gonna happen. So getting back to this question, so we're not suggesting that he's a half Jewish or a quarter Jewish. He's not Jewish. The question is, why would it be so terrible to observe Shabbos as an extra mitzvah? That's question number one. Question number two is that sometimes, you have drushas, you have explanations of a verse that do not go into the simple reading of the verse. That's okay. That's the style of the Gemara, that it explains verses in the Torah in ways that are not literal. But here, it seems to be a very complete departure from the verse in a way that there is no connection between the simple reading of the verse and the explanation the Gemara is giving for it. The simple meaning is about the seasons. Hashem is telling Noach, calm down. You can come out of the teva. Everything's going to be fine. You can plow. You can plant. You can build houses. The seasons are not going to stop. There's not going to be another flood. Everything is fine. Lo yishboisu. Everything is continuing. Nothing is stopping. And the Gemara says, no, it means something else. You shall not observe Shabbos. It's an instruction to the future Gentiles of the world in the future time when there will be Jews and Gentiles. And Hashem is telling them, Lo yishboisu, you shall not observe Shabbos. How can we take a verse and explain it so in a manner that is so distant and far from its simple meaning? So, I'm sorry?
Seemingly so far and distant
Seemingly,
from its literal word.
Of course, which is why we're here.
Right.
To explain the deeper connection and to understand how it's really the same concept. So the Rebbe points out that after the flood, two things occurred. And even though those things seem to be opposite, but they're really two sides of the same coin. On the one hand, the world became more firmly established. Hashem said the world is going to continue. There's not going to be another flood. The seasons are going to go on. Here's the rainbow. That's the sign. So the world seemingly became a more stable kind of place. On the other hand, at the same time, like we explained before, the world before the flood seems to have been a much stronger world, physically stronger and more powerful, in terms of there not being a change of season, in terms of the people being healthier, stronger, taller, living longer, and it seems like what's going on is the world more stable or less stable. So the idea is that the very way the world operated changed from before to after the flood. Before the flood, Hashem was operating the world in a way that he was the one running the show. It was being run from the top, so to speak. Hashem had energized the world. He had made the world. And the world existed because more or less it was conforming to what he had had in mind for it. But when it got out of hand and it was no longer fulfilling the goal that he had in mind for it, that was it. It stopped because the world never strengthened its own position as being deserving of its existence. It was all like a free gift. Hashem had gifted the world its existence, and when the gift was not providing what it was supposed to provide, it was over. On the other hand, after the flood, what Hashem did was he made the world, he gave the world the power to deserve itself. He gave the world the power to fix itself if it would ever be necessary. The power of tshuva.
I got to turn on the motor. That's what causes it.
Mute themselves, please. I need everybody to mute themselves.
Let's go.
How do I do this?
And this has got to be adjusted.
Yeah.
Opening her door.
There we are. Okay. So somebody is at my door. I don't know who that is. Just give me a moment, please.
Probably the person that was calling.
Until you work like a Jew, you don't rest like a Jew. It's- Hey, day, 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 day.
Where should I put that?
What was the reason? The amount? Those taxes.
Whatever you said. Just send it to me and I'll relative.
You said it?
I'll relative it.
Okay.
Yeah. No problem. Send me a copy of that.
Like that.
Thank you so much. All right, sorry for that second disturbance, but my AC guy just finished his work and
Baruch Hashem, you'll stay 5 minutes longer.
Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. So the nature of the world changed after the flood insofar as tshuva became implanted and embedded in humanity, so that even if a person goes off the rails a little bit, even if a community, a nation goes off the rails a little bit, they're not going to go completely off the rails. There'll be a back and forth. It will never be a time that the world will be so bad as it was before the time of the flood. Before the time of the flood, tshuva was an exception to the rule. We don't have any record of anybody doing tshuva except for Adam and Cain. Adam and Chava sinned with the tree of knowledge. We know they did tshuva and they were forgiven, and that's why they did not die immediately. Cain killed his brother. He did tshuva, and he also did not die immediately. He stayed alive for a long time afterwards. Those two people, both of them were created by Hashem. They experienced Gan Eden, so they were exceptional people. But other than those two people, we have a world that existed for nearly 1,000 years, 10 generations, and not one person did tshuva. Because at that time, tshuva was not really embedded in society. The world was busy receiving the sustenance from Hashem. Like we said before, the world was such a place of such opulence and blessing that people did not feel that they had to put their work into the world to make it a better place. The world, at the same time that it was weakened, like we said, with the season starting, with the people having more health troubles, with the people living less time and so on, at the same time, people felt that they were responsible for the world, that the world wasn't just a gift that Hashem was gifting them and they were free to do as they wanted, but rather that they had to make a difference for the world to exist. This is the whole idea of the climate change movement. Now, I am not a Democrat per se. I happen to be a registered Democrat, but that's besides the point. I am not a climate activist per se, but I will say that they do have it right, that we can make a difference to the world. The way you behave in your own kitchen, in your own laundry room, in your own, lifestyle, with whatever you're doing, can change the world. Even though you're just one person, you can still make a global effect. That is true. And
Rebbe,
that awareness,
that's close to a billion of you out there.
well, every one of us.
Billions of you out there. The same thing you're doing is the billions out there.
Exactly. We are part of those billions. So therefore, this idea that we are the ones that are making a difference in the world, that became embedded and part of mankind's psyche after the flood, which at the same time weakened us because it's up to us to earn it. At the same time, it strengthened us because it made us aware that we have to do what we need to do in order for the world as we know it to continue existing. Somebody raised their hand.
Yes, Rabbi, I have a question.
Yes.
If the generation of Noah, there was no ability for an individual to do tshuva, then how can Noah have been expected to be able to convince people to change their way of life to be righteous?
That's exactly the point. That is exactly the point. The Rebbe brings that out in one of the footnotes on the Sikha. It's not that it was impossible to do tshuva, because we see that Adam and Cain did it, but it was not natural to do tshuva. It was unusual. People were not accustomed to the whole idea of it, which is exactly why Noach, for 120 years, was announcing to anybody who would listen that the world was coming to an end. He had one of those signs, on his back, in the front and the back, and he was standing on the street corner. No, I'm just kidding. But he was announcing that the world is coming to an end for 120 years. Not one person did tshuva. How is that possible? How could it be in 120 years? Nobody cared. I mean, obviously, Noach was a special person. If Hashem chose him, not one person in the whole society cared enough to do tshuva. And that's because at that time, doing tshuva was not natural. It was something people were not used to. People were used to doing whatever they wanted, not being told to change, not being aware that what they did would actually make a difference. They didn't believe that Hashem would destroy the world. They just didn't believe it. They had never seen the idea of reward and punishment. For them, it was just a perfect world up until that time.
But it seems to me that a lot of the commentaries denigrate Noah for not having succeeded toward the objective of bringing people to the righteous side of the aisle.
That is a good question. We do speak about Noach in a little bit of a negative light compared to Avraham, and talk about the fact that Avraham went out and about pronouncing the one Hashem, whereas Noach only told it to people that asked. So it seems like maybe if he would have put in a bigger effort, he would have been successful. But those are not contradictory ideas, meaning to say, the Rebbe is not saying tshuva was impossible. He was just saying it was improbable. If Noach had worked harder, if he had gone door knocking, if he had gone making visits to the schools and the community centers and the kindergarten, if he had gone, maybe he would have convinced 2 people to do tshuva. That's all he needed. To save the world was just 2. We see by Avraham that if there would have been 10 people, Hashem would not have destroyed the city of Sodom. That was the key. So you had Noach and his wife, you had his 3 sons and their wives, you had 8 people. To save the whole world, all Noach had to do was get 2 people to do tshuva, yet he didn't do it. So again, it would not have been an easy task based on what we're saying, because doing tshuva at that time was a big exception rather than the rule. but we still would have liked Noach to try harder.
But the flip side of the coin is, would Abraham, if Abraham and Noah were swapped chronologically, would Abraham have had any more success than Noah?
Well, that's one of the mysteries of creation. Why did Hashem put Abraham's soul down into this world 10 generations later, and Noach's soul 10 generations earlier, when he could have just switched it around and things could have been very different? This is one of the mysteries that will remain a mystery. Would it have been different? I assume it would have been, because Abraham was who he was. So why didn't Hashem just switch it around? That I don't know.
That's correct. Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Hashem wanted to find somebody that will understand it by himself. He didn't want to force it on somebody.
Perhaps. Perhaps. Okay, so this explains, by the way, the change in the world explains the whole idea of the rainbow. Hashem said the rainbow is the sign that he's not going to destroy the world. Now, how can the rainbow be a sign if the rainbow is a natural phenomena that happens when the light refracts on the water droplets that are in the air after, when the rain is slowing down? It's the refraction of the beams of light on those droplets of water, and that's just the way the world is. So how does it become a sign if it's just a natural phenomenon? Now, there are different opinions about that. Some say that that Hashem took a natural phenomena which existed before, and he said, that's going to be the sign. Like, let's say you're borrowing money from somebody, and you look around and there's no witnesses, and you say, okay, that tree is going to be the witness. What do you mean? A tree can't be a witness. It means that looking at that tree will remind you that you owe me the money. It's like a reminder. The tree existed before, but we're standing by this tree right now, and I'm pointing to it, and I'm saying this is going to be the reminder. So some say that the Ramban says this, the rainbow existed before, but Hashem is saying from now on, this is going to be a reminder. However, another interpretation that the Rebbe explains here, also I believe the Ramban explains it as well, is that the nature of the world changed, and that before the flood happened, the way the water would evaporate was different, and it did not evaporate in such a manner that it had small droplets that could refract the light in a way that created a rainbow. So rainbows did not exist because the whole nature of the world was more coarse. It was not an elevated world. It was a more coarse world. And that's why the rainbow was chosen as a sign. The fact that there is a rainbow is because the world became a more elevated place, a place that is more prone for spirituality, more available for spirituality in terms of tshuva being easier, like we said. And as a result of that, that's why the rainbow is a sign, because it indicates that even if people sin, they're going to come back. It's not going to be the end of the world. Yes, Susan, you have a question.
What is the Hebrew word for rainbow?
Keshes.
Keshes? Thank you.
Keshes. In modern Hebrew, you would say keshet.
Keshes.
So, question? Okay, so this is all going to come back to explain the question we had, why the non-Jews do not observe Shabbos, and how the pasuk can be taken to mean something that seems very distant from the simple pshat. So once again, the world changed in such a way that after the flood, it became a place that could be more easily elevated and made spiritual. And this was a task that the Jewish people were tasked with. Soon after the flood, well, maybe 10 generations after the flood, with Abraham and then Yitzchok, and then Yaakov, and eventually Moshe Rabbeinu and the Torah, and so on. So the world was being prepared for that time when the Torah would be given, so that we, the Jewish people, could continue to elevate the world and bring spirituality into it. Now, the non-Jewish people who did not accept the Torah, their task in this world is to prepare the world and make it a place into which the revelation of the Torah can take place. So they are like preparing the receptacle of the world, and the Jewish people are supposed to bring in the divine light and revelation and higher aspect of spirituality into this world. And this is why the non-Jew who observes Shabbos, according to the Gemara, deserves to die. What that means is he is playing the wrong role in this world. Everybody has a role to fill. And a person who plays the wrong role is simply mistaken. They're not fulfilling what they're here for, right? Nowadays, a person can be born a man and think they were supposed to be a woman, vice versa, all kinds of things. The Torah does not acknowledge that. If you were created to be a certain way, it's because Hashem wants you to be that way. Even if you don't feel it, Hashem wants you to be that way. So you have to learn how to live with the role that Hashem gave you. And that's what this is. A person who is not Jewish. A person can make themselves Jewish, that's true. And then at that point, they have a different function in this world. But until that time, their function is to prepare the world to be a proper receptacle into which the godly light will be revealed. And to try to change the roles is not proper. They're not fulfilling the role that they're here for. So that explains why it's not proper for them to observe the Shabbos. And that goes back to the pasuk, Yom v'layla lo yishboisu. The fact that the seasons are not going to stop means that the world is a more elevated place. And therefore it has seasons that will not stop, because the ups and the downs will never go too far off the rails. And from now on, the Gentiles in the world are expected to prepare this world and make it a proper place through which the divine light will be revealed. And that goes together with the idea of them not keeping Shabbos. So the two interpretations of the verse are actually not so far from each other. Yes, Yisrael, you have a question.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm so puzzled about who should not be encouraged to keep Shabbos. What about people who consider themselves to be Jewish because they went through a reform, a conservative conversion? Should they be encouraged? Obviously, it should be encouraged to have a corrected conversion by orthodoxy. But what if they insist they're Jewish and they keep Shabbos? Or should they encourage to keep Shabbos, or tell them they're doing something wrong?
That's a good question. So my answer is, if there is any possibility whatsoever that their conversion was kosher, meaning to say if there were 3 Shabbos observant people present, 3 Shabbos observant men present when they went into the mikvah, so it is possible that it's a kosher conversion, even if those people represented a different stream of Judaism, but they were personally Shomer Shabbos, then I would think they should observe it just in case. Maybe it is a good conversion, even if they're doing a better conversion, but it's possible that it was good, so to be safe, they should keep Shabbos. But if it was definitely an improper conversion, no question about it, then they should not.
And that is specifically now, can you sum it up in a sentence, why it's so bad again?
Basically, the Jewish people and the Gentile people have different roles in this world. The Gentile people are supposed to prepare this world and make it a proper place into which the Jewish people will infuse the divine spirit. So each nation has their role to play, and if a nation is trying to take on the role of another nation, then they're not fulfilling their own role. That's what we mean, Chayav Misa, deserves to die. It doesn't mean they're being killed, but it means that their purpose in this world is not being fulfilled. They're not doing what they're supposed to accomplish. Because they're focusing on something they cannot do anyway. So one comes at the expense of the other. If they,
It's not our place. It's not either our place to be executing all this. Hashem runs the world, not us. The point is, Hashem will deal with them later in terms of what we do. You
right,
wasted all these
I'm not
years.
saying who should execute anybody. I'm just saying in terms of what the right thing for them to do is, their focus should be on preparing the physical world and making it a moral place, and then the bringing in the spirituality, what the Jewish people should be able to do.
Makes sense. It's like my father, they had the story about the two chavrusas, right?
Yeah.
They're, for 20 years, they're chavrusas, they're learning together 20 years. One turns to the other and says, I'm making mazel tov, I'm making a wedding for my son. Mazel tov. Chavrusa goes, mazel tov, mazel tov. He goes, I want you to be one of the witnesses at the wedding. I want to give you the kibbut. We've been learning for 20 years. I want you to be one of the witnesses to stand there at the chuppah and help me marry off my son. And he goes, well, I got a problem with that. He goes, what's the problem? 20 years, you're going to insult me? He goes, no. I don't know if you really want me because I'm not really Jewish. What are you talking about? We're learning 20 years together. You're not Jewish? He goes, no, I like to learn. I mean, the Torah, your debates and your talks, but to be a witness, I'm not really Jewish. He goes, what are you talking about? We've lived next to each other. We've worked together. Shabbos. He goes, no. I don't keep Shabbos. He goes, what do you mean you don't keep Shabbos? He goes, no, he goes, you're acting like a Jew. You keep Shabbos, you're chayav misa. He goes, no. I don't keep Shabbos. Whenever we go outside, whatever, I always make sure I have a key in my pocket. So I am always carrying something. So I am not really keeping Shabbos. He goes, you carry a key? I don't understand. That we have an Eruv here in the community. He goes, yeah, but I don't hold from the Eruv. So.
Yes, indeed. An oldie but goodie.
Yeah.
Very good, my friends. It's been a pleasure, and I will see you next week with Hashem's help.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye-bye.
Sure,
Thank you, Rabbi.
Like us and stay safe, everyone. Wonderful.
Thank you.